Welcome to the Play Create podcast. I'm Kirsten Gunnerud.
And I'm Jill Johnson.
This is a place to explore play and creativity.
It is, and this is where we come together and we play and create forward, which means that we give momentum to our ideas and our thoughts that have been kind of keeping us up every night.
Yeah, in every aspect of life, work, parenting, you name it, there's no place we won't go and explore.
And when it gets down to it, we just want to have fun.
So we're back with Shannon Doleac, and we are going to dive into each of Shannon's 7 pillars because they're amazing and they're powerful unto themselves and all together. Whoa, watch out. So your first pillar is mind. Tell us a little bit about that pillar.
Yeah, so the mind, and I mean like caring for the mind. I mean taking care of the mind. So there are a lot of elements that could play a role, but to me, the things that stick out are mindset, mindfulness, and then a meditation / gratitude practice. Mm-hmm. And I think that mindset, and I think we could play a little bit with these 7 pillars and how they relate to food, just because nutrition is my thing, and it will kind of allow me to play a little bit. I often think about these 7 pillars just in terms of life in general and how we can tap into feeling fulfilled in our life ventures. But why not talk a little bit about food as an example? So when we think about mindset, I think having positive attitude and positive beliefs around food is really huge. So one, just how we approach food in terms of sustenance and nourishment, and that we're allowing and accepting that to be why we're eating is really helpful. And also just having a positive attitude towards making food a priority in your life and the benefit that brings to you. So, again, coming back to mind in general, how we look at the world and the attitudes that we have towards anything really can impact the outcome. It can really impact our experience. And then also I think with mindfulness and food, there's a lot there where we can really wake ourselves back up. And many of us go about our eating experiences very unaware. We might be doing other things at the same time. Yeah, it happens to all of us. But I think it just takes conscious effort to tune into here and now. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to become fully aware of this meal in front of me. I'm going to see it first. I'm going to smell it and taste all the different flavors, notice the textures, and even hear the sounds of chewing. So simple exercises like that wake us back up and really bring us into the present moment. I think there's a lot of value there.
Oh, I love that. Love that.
And actually, can I share one of my favorite activities?
Yeah.
Is that so? Jill, you and I may have talked about this, but taking a meal and trying to chew each bite 40 times, I call it the 40 chews activity, is a really fun, it's a fun moment, actually, if you can do it too, not just by yourself, but as a family. It's an event, basically, to sit down and take that much time. But it brings such a different experience to a meal because you're really tapped into so many more flavors, so many more textures, just so much more sense comes out of it, that it's just very eye-opening. So I challenge people to give that a shot.
I love that. And isn't that better for your digestion too? Isn't one of our issues is that we don't really chew our food anymore? Or is that just an old wives' tale that I've heard?
That is true. And I think it even begins with sitting down and taking a few breaths to prepare your body for the act of digesting and absorbing nutrients. So when we're on the go, or we're in a stress moment, we're in our fight or flight response, it's actually really hard for the body to digest food and give it the attention that it needs, which can lead to stomach distress and lack of absorption of nutrients.
Yeah.
It was funny. I did this Ayurvedic cleanse and stuff, and the woman always said, what was it? Chew your liquids and drink your solid. So the whole idea was when you're drinking to really slow that down, and when you're eating to make sure it turns into a liquid before it's actually ingested. So yeah, it's a really good practice.
I love that.
Love it. Let's explore body. So body is another one of your 7 pillars. Tell us a little bit about that pillar and what that looks like in your world.
Yeah, body to me means caring for our physical body. And I often talk about it in terms of movement. So many times when we think of body and a healthy body, we think of the importance of exercising or working out. But I think that is actually a limiting, those can be limiting words. And of course, it depends on who you are and whether you enjoy exercising or working out or not. But I think it's really fun to look at movement instead. So the body is designed to move. And ancestrally, we had to be able to run fast, climb, crawl, pull, push, squat in order to survive, in order to build shelters and hunt or gather foods and even ward off predators.
Yeah.
But today, we can live a pretty sedentary lifestyle. And I think even those of us that enjoy exercise or have a regular workout routine, it doesn't actually account for much in a 24-hour period. We can still be consistent with that, but often sedentary the majority of the time. So what I like to encourage people to do is just have fun with movement throughout the day and find some things that you enjoy doing, even if you are at an office job, or even if you are unable to devote 30 minutes to an hour of exercise. There's so much that we can explore body-wise outside of that. So it's thinking about movement or thinking about exercise in a new way. That's what I mean by body.
Yeah.
And when it comes to exploring and playing with that and how it relates to food, I think there are a few things to consider. I think one is just that, we do want to nourish our body so that it can perform the way we want it to perform physically. And it needs certain nutrients in order to be able to do that. Again, if we consider our ancestors, they ate to be able to carry about their needs, their survival tasks.
And there's some things, they're not nutrients, but there's some things we maybe don't need. Like for me, sugar and gluten
Absolutely.
make my brain go bonkers and not be able to operate. And when I'm putting those in my body, it doesn't work in my body.
Right. And you're able to tap in and feel how that feels physically for you and mentally, emotionally, really. But you're right, being in tune to how certain foods make you feel, I think is really important. So while there are, I think, some common general guidelines in terms of healthy eating, we are still individual. And so not everything that works for me works for you and vice versa. And, being able to listen to your body and feel that is a great skill. I think, we're kind of numb to that now. I think we have to reawaken that ability. Kind of lost that speaking, generally speaking. Not everybody has, but I think that's really important. And then, I think being able to adjust. So if you're being creative with how that food helps your body perform, but being willing to try new things and give yourself that freedom to notice if it's working or not. So not being afraid basically to move in the wrong direction, but you have to give yourself that time to explore it.
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just again, it's playing.
Yeah.
It's getting out and moving and seeing what you like. And one day it might be one thing and another day it might be a different thing. But
Right.
the purpose, the intention, the goal, Jilly, is just to move. And the more you do it, the better your body will be. Is that what you're saying? Or am I?
Yeah, that is what I'm saying. And also, movement, the benefits of movement we often think of in terms of strength or flexibility or mobility, but also it's important for digestion. It's important for just happiness and mental health and even general self-esteem. So there are elements to movement that impact how your body handles food and how we feel mentally and emotionally.
One of the things too is just that I think just like food, movement has become prescriptive too. So a lot of people overthink it. Like once again, like instead of just choosing, the rainbow of foods, or just going outside and just engaging whatever frisbee or whatever it is with your kids or with anyone, instead we're starting to be like, okay, well, what time is that fitness class and when is this, and so it becomes chunks instead of just like the whole body, the holistic approach of seeing it in all its things. So I think it's so important that it's like the second one of just knowing how that movement is, it's just not one thing, it's a multitude. And I loved how you described it at the beginning of, I know we're evolving creatures, so we can't, as I was saying yesterday, put the past as a hitching post, but we can learn from it. And, just the idea of crawling, when are people crawling anymore? And just little things like that, like playing into those movements that we once were so a part of our bodies and that we just forget about, which also connects everything else.
So when my son wants me to climb out of the window like a race car driver, that's a good thing.
Yep.
It is.
Good luck.
That's a good move too. Like you should have that in your arsenal, Kirsten.
We have this deck of cards. They're called Primal Play, I think, and maybe Primal Moves. And it's a series of animal moves. And you can pull them out and create like a fun workout with all these different animal moves. And so we bring them on road trips. And the first time that we did it, our kids were horrified when we stopped at a rest area and we like got out the cards. They were so embarrassed. They're like, we are not doing this.
So people have to know who don't know. So Shannon, you were a gymnast.
Yes.
And your husband was an NBA basketball player.
Yes.
So you guys kind of stand out as it is. And then you pull these cards out.
We do. Yeah, we draw attention no matter where we go. So yes, this adds a whole nother element. And so we put together this workout the very first time, and we're out on this grass, and we had never had so much fun as a family after like going through it, that we got back in the truck and we were like re-energized and belly laughing and just had a blast, because we just let go of the eyes that were on us. We let go of, what we normally do, and just had fun. And it was awesome. Heart rate was up, blood's pumping.
I love that for so many reasons. I think everyone needs to order their set of those cards. Tell us about food.
Yes, food. So this pillar is really designed to just give food the attention that I think it deserves. And we've mentioned before that we have a lot of conveniences today when it comes to food. It's at our fingertips. It's all around us, generally speaking. And so we often don't really think about its importance, but food really is our life force. And I like to think of it as our first medicine. But you have to consider that if we didn't have food, we really wouldn't last but more than, maybe, it really depends on the person, but we'll say a week. We need food to survive. And we need food also to try and thrive. And so I would love for people to tune into nutrients and get more out of food so that they really feel their best, rather than just looking at food as something that's filling that void in their stomach. And I think there's an important concept when it comes to eating, and that is that you can be overfed and undernourished very easily. Whereas we would rather it be that you're, very well nourished, and the foods that you're choosing are giving you the most life that you can get out of them. So, when it comes to food, I really like to encourage people to look at what the earth naturally provides for us. Eating the food from the land is how we became the species that we are. And, we're not going back to be caveman. I'm not asking anybody to, hunt all their food and gather all their food. But, like we said, you can learn from our past and apply those concepts to where we're at in our modern day. And I think that we need to make sure that we do that. We need to make sure that we remember that we can't outsmart nature. And usually when men tries to do that, when woman or man try to interfere, then it tends to backfire on us. And so really trying to look at how we can reach for real whole foods and build a base from those items is going to support us the best.
So someone is going to the grocery store. They focus on all the processed foods in the middle, right?
Right. Yeah, my advice there is always go with a list and spend as little time possible in the center aisles and really emphasize the perimeter of the store. That's where the freshest foods are. Your fruits and vegetables and your quality meats and your healthy fats are going to be found in those outer parts of the store.
Yeah. Okay. And just that alone can make a massive difference for people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That was a huge thing when we went gluten-free, because all of that food, especially when I first went gluten-free, it wasn't a thing yet. And so the whole middle of the store was essentially wiped out. And then it was really interesting, that pull, when more and more gluten-free foods, because I could have this again and I could have this again. And it was this whole thing. And it has been that, it's just been interesting to kind of notice how that whole process has gone and how easy it is that our heads kind of go, oh, but I haven't had that. I want to have that again. And it's so complex.
Yes, I always encourage people to be their own detective in the store. And, as you do venture into the aisles, you want to make sure you're looking at the ingredient list rather than the messaging and marketing on the package, because companies are really good at making us believe that a product is healthy. And yet, if you turn it over, you can make your own decision. If you read the ingredients and you're noticing a lot of items on there that you don't recognize and you can't pronounce and you're not sure what they are, then it's a pretty good indication that you probably don't want to be putting much of that in your body. You want to instead try and find those foods that have a short ingredient list, or better yet, not even an ingredient list.
I love it. Okay, this is one of my favorite. I love every single one on your list, but I love that nature is on your list. So tell us about nature.
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue that nature heals. It definitely has like an energy in it that's revitalizing. And similarly to movement, we can go through much of our lives not touching nature today. So, movement-wise, we can be sedentary. Nature-wise, we can live in insulated homes and drive in cars from our garage to our workplace. And even when we're walking outside, we've got rubber-soled shoes on, and maybe we're walking on concrete. So we've lost the connection to the natural world, again, generally speaking. And so the ability to bring that back, even on a small level, can really improve your sense of well-being. And I think, again, if we're going to play with the idea of food and how these 7 pillars might relate, growing your own food in some capacity is a great way to connect to nature again. Starting a garden in any size and just allowing your hands to get dirty in the soil again and touch something that you're growing. Thinking about the sunlight and being out in the sunlight, those are all things that are really going to help fill you back up. They're going to re-energize you and connect you to the natural world again. So that's always one of my tips, is to have families, and always include your kids when you can, do something where you can grow your own food, even if it's a small herb garden on your windowsill, or you're growing, maybe you want to grow cherry tomatoes in a pot on your back patio. But that's just a great way to begin. Getting outside, of course, if you live in a place where you can do that right now, then, even in these crazy times, they're showing that it's really important for our immune health, just for our sense of well-being. And there actually are energies in the earth that we need and are an important part of who we are as a species. So I think it's critical that we do what we can to reconnect. I think anyone too who's gone camping or spent a significant time out in nature and unplugged from the technological world and the connection that we're used to having at our fingertips, you just come back with a sense of wholeness. You just come back with a renewed energy.
One of my favorite stories about COVID and this experience that we've been happening is the growth in bird watching. And just people are noticing nature in a way they haven't noticed it for so long, because they're in one place or because they have the time or whatever the different factors are. And so it has created bird watching again, or brought more interest to things like that. The stars at night have been brighter than I've ever seen them where we are. And it's been interesting how nature has kind of gone, I'm here, I'm over here.
Yeah, I think even watching the seasons change too, through this experience, we've kind of moved from winter into our short spring, and now even seeing a glimpse of summer, and just to see the change and in the foliage, the buds and the blossoms on the trees, and the change in the colors that are happening around us, because we are more still and we are more aware of just our local environment. Has been a really neat experience.
I agree. Jill, were you going to add something?
I was watching 60 Minutes this weekend, and the guy that they had on talked about how, we're trying to flatten the curve for what's happening with COVID, but he was saying, he was an environmentalist, and just said maybe this will help flatten the curve for where we were headed with our natural world. And so I just think that the more that you're eating with consciousness or being aware of where the foods are coming from, it just helps the whole system, because you're bringing a whole awareness that doesn't exist when you're just on the fly. And I think by and by, as a whole entire species, we were on the fly. So now having this moment to just allow Earth to come and go back to what you were saying, there's vital energies that we have and the Earth has, and it's just important that they all reconnect.
Well, that food, our lettuce in our little arrow garden tastes so good compared to the lettuce we get at the grocery store, right? And I think there's another thing there too, that the closer we are to nature, the closer our food is, or the closer we are to where our food comes from. And so many people notice that, but then we forget it. Oh my gosh, why is this tomato is so good? And then we go and we go buy there instead of the farmer's market, or instead of thinking about having our own little garden for the couple months, at least in the mountains, that we can usually sustain one. But it's, nature magic. Okay, Shannon, another pillar, which we talked about in one of our podcasts with you, but is the pillar of play. So tell us a little bit about that pillar. I think, well, I'll speak for myself. That's I think that's my ultimate favorite pillar in here because we love to play.
Yes, play is probably, though, one of the hardest pillars for adults to bring back into their life or have in their life. I think we often think of play as something that children do, and it's often referred to as childish. So there's a little bit of stigma around play, and I would like to break that and encourage more people to play. And, I think take away the idea that it has to be silly or that it's doesn't have a purpose, because play has a huge purpose in all of our lives. And we start out as young children seeking play. When my kids come home from school, all they want to do is play, and they use that word, play. And to them, it's an unstructured, uninhibited, joyful moment where they can just be free to create and free to explore what they want. And I think that in the adult life, that's just as important. And we need to have that moment where we can explore whatever it is that we're interested in, or be curious about things that we're unsure of, or be curious about different points of view, or maybe a different way of doing something. And so I think encouraging people to make a list of things that they love to do that maybe they're not worried about an outcome for, or they're not worried about being maybe successful with. It's just to do and to see what comes of it is really awesome. Those that have a hard time incorporating play, I encourage them to structure it in. So add it to your calendar, just in really small amounts.
Yeah.
Again, if you have kids, follow their lead. They're really good at guiding in play.
Anyone who says play is childish, I love to refer to, and I'm not going to remember exactly where the study came from, and it's been repeated many times, the marshmallow and the spaghetti. Have you guys heard this one? So the goal is to take spaghetti and marshmallow, or I think it was one marshmallow. I'll find the details and we'll provide them, but and make as tall of a structure as they could. And they took kindergartners, and they took CEOs, and they took, I think it was a set of lawyers. They took all these people, very educated, people, and kids built the highest, pretty much across the board, every time the study has been done, build the highest, most successful structure. And it's because they play their way into it instead of plan and all the things we do when we're adulting.
Yes.
So play is a powerful tool.
It is. And, we talked a lot about it in terms of food already, but I have some other activities or tips when it comes to playing with food. I think having dinners where we call it caveman style dinners, where you're free to use your hands at all times, is a really fun way to play. So maybe rather than the food fight or throwing your food, it's the mess is a little bit more contained, but it's just, kids love it, adults love it. It's a great playful moment. And then also having themed dinners can be really fun for the family. And the obvious one to start with is Taco Tuesday. These days there's a lot of buzz about Taco Tuesdays, but you can expand that throughout the week or come up with your own family themes that keep everybody excited for the next meal and keep people engaged and thinking about ways that you can be creative around that dish. And then also, this is one of my favorites. I don't know if you've seen this book called Food Play,
No.
But it's literally full of produce items like fruits and vegetables that you can carve and be creative, making animals and funny faces and basically art, with
Well, you're going to do that, aren't you? I can see the light bulb going off.
It's happened. And, even funny face plates for young kids is another really great activity. You can, I think it'd be really fun actually to make them at one of those paint your own pottery places, but you can also find them online. It just gives you a framework to start from, or just a blank plate and have kids make funny faces while you're providing them with different colorful and different textured foods so that they can, and adults alike, right? We don't have to limit it to kids, but just having pure fun with food is also awesome.
Love that.
Yeah. And I think what it does, it helps get us out of our rigid ways. So when you're saying play, to me, it's just a flexibility and a malleability to adjust. And when you were talking, I remember I traveled when I was younger, and I got back and I had done a whole cooking class in Thailand, and there we went through the markets, but one of my favorite meals was this papaya salad with sticky rice. But everywhere I ate it in Thailand was, with your fingers. And so I made it one night. I brought all my girlfriends over, and they're like, "Where's the silverware?" I'm like, "No, we're eating with our fingers." And, it was really, some of them really fought me. I'm like, "Nope, if you don't like it, you can't eat it. Like, this is how we eat this dish." But also being aware of like cultural and just how it opens up that, a lot of the stuff that we do has been habituated. So it's really exciting to see what other areas are doing with their food and how to play into, our own limited knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah, and that reminds me too of exploring other cultures and traditions around food too is awesome. We get, food is becoming globalized, and you don't always recognize where it originated from anymore, but there's so much play there. There's so much fun there in exploring tradition.
Yeah.
So play with your food. So another pillar, we're almost sixth pillar. They're not necessarily in that order, but is people. Talk to us about people. I think this is one that might surprise people surprising people, coming from a nutritionist, and that, that's not all you do, but that kind of being the core.
Yeah, people, we're social beings, that's what makes us really unique. And one of my favorite quotes says, "Deep and genuine connection with another human is seemingly what we are all searching for." And so Primal Peak is really about encouraging face-to-face and in-person connection these days. And it may be hard to do in this time for some people, although using things like Zoom is a great way to at least try and connect, while we can still see facial expressions and hear tone of voice and see body language. I think that that's really an important part of the true connection. But really it's about just bringing family, friends, and community together. And we can relate that to food, in my opinion, very easily, because I believe that food should bring people together. And it should be about joining over a beautiful meal. We often use food in celebration. We use food in cultural tradition. And it's when we're bringing people together to unite over something. And so I think that the number one thing we can all do in our own homes today is try and eat more family meals together and bring back that important time. And we have an opportunity right now more than probably ever to do that and establish a better routine and habit over that. But take note of what it provides you, what it brings to you and your family. If you are alone, maybe even having a meal over Zoom or over FaceTime with a good friend or family member.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and just see how you feel afterwards. What's the difference between that moment and eating something by yourself? And so that's what I mean by people in terms of food. But I think just in general, we've become a little bit disconnected, even though there's a sense today of being very connected through social media. It often lends a false sense of connection, in my opinion, and can lead to increased loneliness or even anxiety and depression. So finding things that you can do locally in your community to reconnect with the people that matter to you most. And to me, again, we can't do that easily right now always, but to me, doing so around food is a great way to connect.
Yeah. The last pillar that we're going to explore is rest.
Yes, so rest, last but not least, it's really when our body is healing. It's really when it's able to recover and rebuild. Mm-hmm. And by rest, I mean both sleep and downtime. So, it doesn't have to be just the hours where the lights are off and we're in our room, but also giving ourselves an opportunity to have a down moment is really important. And I think it's important for recovering physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I would say probably next to play, it might be the toughest pillar for many adults to adequately get enough of. And I think one reason for that is because it usually requires us saying no to something else in order to get adequate rest. And through that, many people feel like they're being unproductive, or they're lazy, or they're not, staying up with the Joneses. And I'd like to remind everyone that if we're not adequately rested, then we're really not working at our full capacity. So take note of when you do get enough rest and enough downtime, are you more productive when it's go time? And, I think that, that's important to tune into. When it comes to food, there are a few different ways to make the connection. And I think one is that there are foods that help us feel restful or be able to fall asleep easier. There are foods that support sleep. There are also foods that do not support sleep. They might inhibit rest and in quality sleep. And then also adequate rest improves our food choices. So I think we've all experienced that when we're running ragged and we have not gotten enough rest, or maybe you've pulled an all-nighter, often your food choices are terrible, right? You're just grabbing for anything that's going to help make you feel better, give you that extra energy, when really there's no replacement. There's nothing that you're going to be able to put in that's going to make up for that lack of rest, lack of sleep. And then lastly, I think this is a really interesting concept, but allowing the body to rest from eating is actually one of the best things that we can do from time to time. So the more our body has to break down and process our food, the more work it has to do, and the more taxing that is. Not to say you shouldn't eat and take care of yourself, but there are also times that we can give our body a break from that and allow it to heal. And we have a lot of healing capacity deep inside of us that we can tap into.
Absolutely. So after you've eaten a big meal, is that a time to get on the couch, or is that a time to move?
I would say maybe a little bit on the couch so that your body can digest all that food. But the goal, I think, too, is that when you think about the interconnectedness of all these pillars, it's really interesting and fascinating. So the more active you are, then actually I think the tendency is less to way overeat or way indulge in food. So yeah, they play off of each other.
I love these pillars. I'm guessing, so our launch pad, as you know, is the let go, notice more, use everything, and those circles. And Rob, who came up with them, and also, by the way, wrote a book called Do Pause, which is all about resting and the power of that.
Yes.
But the power of those circles is it doesn't matter which one you start, as long as you start in one, it automatically kind of creates things that help you build in the others. And I'm guessing this kind of works the same way. Like you could almost pick one to start with and that would start feeding the others. Is that what you see happening?
Absolutely. It's actually really hard for me sometimes to separate them.
Yeah.
And you do see that they feed off of each other, and there's so much overlap and so much, interconnectedness between them, which is really neat.
Yeah.
And I think, they're all things that as children we seek. So we start out with these pillars in mind, and we use them for support and stability as we grow. And then I find that just with the busyness of our world and even the great opportunities that are out there, the pillars start to crumble away, and we devote less time and energy to them. And so I think that it's important to refocus a little bit. And I always like to throw the question out there that if we don't have time to address these different pillars, then is what we're spending our time on really worth it in the long run? So to me, these pillars are really there to help us feel our best. And I think that should probably be our first priorities if we really think about it in life.
I just did a quote. Let's see if I can find it quick. If you don't make time to work on creating the life you want, you're eventually going to be forced to spend a lot of time dealing with a life you don't want.
Yes.
And just that idea that we don't have time, but what are you creating by not making time for this? And that was just a really powerful way. My choices are creating something, even if I don't think I'm making that choice, even if I think I have to. What am I actually creating with that? Yeah. If you like this podcast, don't forget to subscribe.
And definitely share it with all your friends.
Heck yeah, we can all use more play and creativity in our lives.
Yes, especially with our friends.
Yes. And check us out on social media. We're at RocketTrike Studios. We'd love to have you join us there.